Nothing exposes the absolute insanity of corporate America quite like an open bar at a mandatory company mixer. We have compiled 50 of the most unhinged, hilariously catastrophic moments where professionals threw their careers in the trash over a plate of free appetizers. Watch closely, because you probably work with someone exactly like this. 1. Let's talk about the IT guy who thought he was a modern-day Houdini. Bragging non-stop about his new lockpicking hobby, he accepted a drunken challenge to crack the office supply closet. Astonishingly, he actually pulled it off. The triumph lasted roughly 2 seconds before the heavy antique door swung shut behind him. Here's the kicker. The inside had absolutely no hardware. While everyone else was outside inhaling stale shrimp and cheap wine, our resident genius spent a 3-hour party trapped among toner cartridges. He was reduced to desperately tapping Morse code on the wood, praying someone would rescue his dignity. They eventually freed him, but he'll be known as Padlock until retirement. 2. You know the type. An unpaid intern determined to leave a lasting legacy at the CEO's lavish mansion. Staring into the executive's imported $1,000 koi pond, this absolute visionary loudly announced he possessed the aquatic supremacy to outswim the fish. What followed wasn't an Olympic dive, but an eardrum-shattering belly flop into 24 inches of water. Security literally had to net him out. He emerged dripping with green algae and profound corporate shame. The absolute best part? The koi didn't even scatter. They just floated there, completely unfazed by a guy making minimum wage aggressively invading their living room. 3. Coordination isn't exactly a strong suit in marketing. 2 separate guys decided it would be an incredible power move to show up wearing identical premium Santa Claus suits. Instead of laughing off the coincidence like well-adjusted adults, an alcohol-fueled debate erupted over who embodied the true spirit of Saint Nick. This petty squabble rapidly devolved into a completely unhinged fistfight right next to the dessert buffet. Watching 2 grown men in crushed red velvet throwing sloppy haymakers is a visual masterpiece you simply cannot unsee. The only actual casualties were a violently body-slammed gingerbread house and 2 massive, bruised egos. 4. White elephant gift exchanges are basically psychological warfare. A junior graphic designer thought he was delivering the ultimate ironic joke by wrapping up a notoriously hideous, neon-colored company fleece. Fate, however, operates with a cruel sense of humor. The unlucky soul who unwrapped this polyester tragedy was the head of marketing, the exact same executive who had personally designed and approved that miserable garment 6 months prior. The absolute deadpan, soul-piercing glare he shot the junior designer dropped the room's temperature by 20 degrees. It was a masterclass in suffocating corporate awkwardness, and honestly, the greatest gift everyone else could ask for. 5. We all know the ancient, tired trope of the guy photocopying his backside, but one logistics manager elevated it to a catastrophic art form. After capturing his rear end in glorious high definition, he somehow shuffled those highly unauthorized prints into a stack of critical quarterly financial packets. Fast forward to the Monday morning board meeting. The famously humorless chief financial officer spent a solid 10 agonizing minutes squinting at the very first page. He genuinely believed he was analyzing some highly complex, asymmetrical market projection graph before the horrific, fleshy reality finally washed over him. 6. If you think the accounting department is responsible with assets, you haven't seen them off the clock. During the mixer, a rogue faction of bean counters established an underground, high-stakes poker ring in a vacant cubicle. Lacking actual chips, they gambled with hundreds of cheap, squishy, company-branded stress balls. The betting became so aggressively deranged that the head of payroll went on absolute tilt. He effectively gambled away his entire projected January cash bonus to a junior auditor. The man legally bound himself by frantically scribbling an IOU on a cocktail napkin just to cover a spectacularly failed bluff. 7. Nothing screams team building quite like chemical warfare. An arrogant project manager decided to establish dominance at the potluck by unleashing a massive slow cooker of his self-proclaimed award-winning chili. He conveniently forgot to warn his colleagues about his secret ingredient. a lethal dose of pure ghost peppers. After aggressively inhaling a bowl to prove his culinary superiority, his face turned the color of a fire engine. He abandoned all pretense of dignity, sprinting down the hallway and igniting a stampede of identically afflicted coworkers. The single-stall men's room was swiftly classified as a biological hazard zone. 8. Trying to flex your intelligence at a party is a rookie mistake, and one intern paid the ultimate price. Attempting to look like a Silicon Valley prodigy, he loudly commanded the office smart speaker to retrieve the confidential fourth-quarter earnings of their biggest industry rival. The digital assistant, performing flawlessly, cranked its volume to the max. But instead of secret data, it started aggressively reading a highly detailed, brutally negative financial analyst report about the intern's own company. The entire room fell dead silent, forced to listen to a cheerful robot ruthlessly dismantle their job security for 3 agonizing minutes. 9. Networking after 4 glasses of cheap Merlot is basically professional self-sabotage. Spotting the notoriously ruthless chief operating officer standing by the cheese board, a wildly misguided junior analyst decided to shoot a shot. Hoping to sound like a fierce corporate warrior, he looked her dead in the eye and praised her aggressive business tactics, literally calling her a beautiful apex predator. He genuinely believed comparing a senior executive to a flesh-eating dinosaur was top-tier flattery. The sheer, icy silence radiating from her could have instantly frozen the nearby chocolate fountain. He spent the next year hiding behind filing cabinets. 10. Corporate espionage is usually a highly sophisticated operation, unless it involves an open bar. A heavily intoxicated guy from research and development decided to pitch his supposedly billion-dollar idea for self-peeling bananas. The fatal flaw? He was rambling to a complete stranger who had wandered over from the rival firm's party next door. Our R&D genius enthusiastically spilled highly technical, proprietary secrets over a plate of stale nachos. He woke up the next afternoon with a pounding headache and a furious email from his director, demanding to know why their biggest competitor just aggressively filed a trademark for automated fruit husking. 11. Salesmen are biologically wired to make absolutely everything about themselves, up to and including holiday foliage. Staring at the beautiful traditional star atop a 15-foot pine tree, a regional manager loudly declared it lacked corporate synergy. His brilliant solution was to physically scale the branches and replace it with his own heavy glass top salesman trophy. He made it exactly halfway up before basic physics violently intervened. The massive tree tipped over, taking this corporate Tarzan down with it and completely obliterating the entire open bar. Watching a grown man cry over crushed vodka bottles is a unique morale booster. 12. The perpetually terrified head of accounting rarely attends social functions, and this specific night validated all his fears. Attempting to be festive, he wore an absurdly long, silky necktie covered in cartoon reindeer. While leaning over an industrial paper shredder to toss a napkin, the machine violently swallowed the tip of his tie. Thanks to the blasting holiday music, nobody heard the motor kick into overdrive. The man was slowly, agonizingly reeled, in face first toward a pile of freshly audited tax returns. The sheer, unadulterated panic in his eyes as he desperately clawed at his collar was absolute comedy gold. 13. Handing the keys to the company's digital presence to a frustrated millennial is always a fantastic gamble. Tasked with capturing candid, magical moments for Instagram, the social media manager fumbled his phone and accidentally initiated a global live broadcast. Oblivious, he shoved the device deep into his coat pocket and marched outside for a smoke break. For 45 glorious minutes, thousands of loyal brand followers were treated to a muffled, profanity-laced tirade as he viciously roasted the CEO's new corporate logo, calling it a crime against graphic design. His digital marketing career was officially terminated before the dessert course. 14. The reply all button is the deadliest weapon in the corporate arsenal, and one love-struck employee managed to nuke his entire life with it. Meaning to secretly text his best buddy a highly graphic confession about his massive physical attraction to a coworker, he somehow pasted the manifesto into the company-wide holiday greeting thread. At exactly 8 o'clock, 500 smartphones buzzed in perfect unison. Every executive, the confused janitorial staff, the woman he was lusting after, and her very large husband from the legal department received the notification simultaneously. The guy literally sprinted out the emergency fire exit. 15. Identity theft is a serious crime, except when it happens at a winter gala. Some absolute legend managed to swipe the CEO's official stick-on name tag right off his tailored jacket. For a solid hour, this rogue employee paraded around the venue, introducing himself to gullible new hires as the visionary founder. He enthusiastically shook hands, promising random unpaid interns totally absurd perks like corner offices, company-leased sports cars, and dedicated espresso chefs. The actual CEO just stood silently by the gin bar, slowly sipping a martini, morbidly fascinated to see how many people would actually believe this magnificent fraud. 16. Mixing alcohol, a microphone, and the legal department is a guaranteed recipe for devastation. A normally quiet paralegal decided it was her absolute destiny to perform Celine Dion's Titanic anthem with the emotional intensity of a Broadway diva. Needing to literally elevate her performance for the final high note, she hoisted herself onto a flimsy aluminum catering table. The metal instantly buckled under the weight of her dramatic ambition. She went down hard, surfing a wave of pure chaos as 200 miniature spinach quiches exploded across the dance floor in a glorious, buttery avalanche while the backing track played on. 17. Bringing interactive technology into a party setting is basically begging for a human resources violation. Desperate to show off a ridiculously expensive new digital smartboard, a software engineer initiated a friendly game of Pictionary. His very first prompt was supposed to be a majestic rocket ship. Unfortunately, his artistic skills were non-existent, and the resulting sketch looked so spectacularly, aggressively inappropriate that grown adults had to physically look away. A guy from a rival department instantly snapped a high-definition photo and emailed the phallic masterpiece to the entire global mailing list under the professional subject line of aggressive growth projections. 18. Never underestimate the absolute lack of situational awareness exhibited by hungry people. A guy from operations wandered over to a display table and genuinely mistook a crystal bowl of highly toxic, heavily perfumed decorative holiday pine cones for a trendy artisanal snack mix. He confidently grabbed a massive handful and started aggressively chewing the festive wood. Instead of quietly spitting out the splinters when he realized his fatal error, he completely doubled down. He tracked down a senior partner and very loudly complained that the catering company had ruined the candied nuts, noting they were obnoxiously woody and tasted like bathroom potpourri. 19. You can always count on the engineering department to drastically overthink a perfectly good party feature. Deciding the luxurious champagne fountain was visually boring, one mastermind acquired a massive brick of industrial dry ice to create a spooky, theatrical smoke effect. He severely miscalculated the basic principles of thermodynamics. The sudden temperature shift caused a violent, volcanic eruption of sticky, expensive alcohol. A massive geyser of booze shot across the room, completely coating the entire accounting department in a sticky glaze, and instantly short-circuiting the DJ's mixing board with a sad robotic squeal. Science is beautiful, just not near expensive electronics. 20. Corporate mascots are usually depressing, but one employee managed to weaponize a giant fuzzy suit. After securing the company's terrifyingly large, cheerful beaver costume, he sneaked out the back door and crashed a competitor's holiday gala directly across the street. He aggressively shoved his way to the center of their dance floor and initiated a hostile, high-energy breakdance battle. Surprisingly, he absolutely destroyed the competition. He won the glory, but entirely lost his livelihood the following Tuesday, when viral Instagram videos of a 6-foot beaver flawlessly executing the worm were traced right back to his marketing desk. 21. Overachievers are a menace to society, and this zealous young intern was no exception. Desperate to prove she was a selfless team player, she spent the evening darting between tables, aggressively clearing away discarded napkins and empty glasses. Tragically, her hyper-focused cleaning spree included snatching up the chief operating officer's obscenely expensive designer Italian leather handbag, firmly believing it was just a crumpled piece of trash. The music had to be killed and the entire event paused while three furious, mid-level managers were forced to march outside and dive through a greasy dumpster in their tailored tuxedos to retrieve it. 22. An overzealous VP of sales decided the lobby's life-sized fiberglass display reindeer looked sturdy enough to serve as a mechanical bull. Egged on by a group of equally intoxicated account managers, he mounted the glowing plastic beast and aggressively spurred its flanks. The hollow reindeer instantly snapped in half under his weight, sending the executive face first into a massive pile of artificial snow. He spent the rest of the elegant night walking around with a massive, humiliating tear in his tuxedo pants, pretending he wasn't actively pulling sharp fiberglass splinters out of his inner thighs. 23. Themed parties are an open invitation for that one guy who desperately needs to be the center of attention. For the ugly sweater contest, a rogue IT specialist engineered a hideous garment wired with a blinding matrix of LED lights, hooked to a hidden battery pack and a high-decibel speaker. This terrifying contraption blasted a distorted, techno version of Jingle Bells on an endless, unskippable loop. The man literally became a walking sensory torture device. His batteries mercifully died 90 minutes into the evening, but not before successfully triggering full-blown migraines in three coworkers who plotted his demise. 24. Never trust a guy in sales to correctly identify exotic cuisine. While hovering over the expensive sushi station, a highly overconfident account executive spotted what he firmly believed was a massive, generous bowl of fresh guacamole. Ignoring all logic, he scooped an ice cream-sized mound of pure, unfiltered wasabi onto a tiny piece of raw tuna and shoved the entire thing into his mouth. The instant the horseradish hit his brain, his eyes practically popped out of his skull. He emitted a guttural screech resembling a prehistoric pterodactyl getting struck by lightning before violently bulldozing through the crowd toward a water fountain. 25. Forcing mandatory team-building exercises at an open bar is a profound lapse in managerial judgment. A delusional department head decided it would be wonderfully therapeutic to pass out index cards, demanding everyone anonymously write down one constructive grievance to read aloud. He genuinely expected polite complaints about printer jams. The exercise was violently derailed the second he enthusiastically read the very first card into the microphone. It bluntly stated, "The salary here is absolute garbage and the break room coffee tastes like hot battery acid." The deadly silence that followed proved that brutal honesty is the fastest way to kill morale. 26. The concept of a funny gag gift is highly subjective, particularly when living creatures are involved. Some total psychopath thought it would be absolutely hilarious to bring a live, highly active corn snake to the company gift exchange, casually wrapping its terrarium in festive paper with crude air holes. Out of 50 possible employees, the box was unwrapped by the accounting manager, a woman notoriously terrified of basic earthworms. When she lifted the lid and saw scales moving, she let out a blood-curdling shriek and instinctively launched the box into the stratosphere. The rest of the evening was a reptile hunt. 27. The toxic hustle culture mindset fully infected one desperately ambitious junior financial analyst. Spotting the elusive CEO heading for the men's room, this kid decided a private bathroom stall was the perfect venue for an elevator pitch. He literally stood outside the closed metal door while the executive was conducting his personal business, loudly projecting a highly detailed 5-year strategic career plan. To seal this horrific deal, the kid actually slid his glossy business card underneath the gap in the door. The only feedback he received was the aggressive, deafening roar of a toilet, flushing with extreme prejudice. 28. Give a bored administrative assistant access to industrial office supplies, and absolute madness will inevitably ensue. Having recently discovered the immense power of the heavy-duty thermal laminator, this guy decided his mission was to immortalize the holiday spirit. He commandeered the machine and aggressively laminated anything not bolted to the floor. We are talking fancy cocktail napkins, his own soggy name tag, an entire half-eaten gingerbread man that caused the machine to smoke, and a hastily printed blurry photograph of his boss spilling red wine. He handed these indestructible, plastic-encased monstrosities out as party favors to incredibly confused executives. 29. Bringing personal aviation equipment to an indoor gathering of intoxicated professionals is peak stupidity. One tech bro insisted on flying his highly expensive camera drone over the dance floor to capture epic, cinematic aerial footage. After successfully annoying the crowd with loud laps around the ballroom, the pilot grew recklessly overconfident. He attempted a highly technical maneuver through a narrow archway, misjudged the wind resistance of the HVAC system, and slammed the drone directly into an intricately stacked pyramid of crystal champagne coupes. The resulting glass-shattering domino effect was visually magnificent, incredibly loud, and financially devastating to his year-end bonus. 30. Trying to artificially inject adrenaline into a boring corporate mixer usually backfires spectacularly. Deciding the atmosphere was a bit too dull, one absolute mastermind grabbed a heavy red fire extinguisher off the wall. Declaring loudly that safety was paramount, he decided to demonstrate proper emergency protocol, despite the obvious lack of flames anywhere in the building. He pulled the pin and blasted the CEO's prized, imported antique Persian rug with a massive, blinding cloud of thick, toxic white foam. He definitely succeeded in waking everybody up, mostly because the echoing sound of the furious CEO firing him was louder than the music. 31. The karaoke machine is essentially a cheap therapist's couch for people who have consumed too many martinis. A recently divorced sales rep hijacked the microphone and held the entire party emotionally hostage. Refusing to sing actual songs, he launched into a brutally intense, 12-minute freestyle rap, meticulously detailing every legal grievance from his failed marriage. To make it infinitely weirder, he dragged a potted office ficus plant to the center of the stage, stated it represented his ex-wife, and aggressively directed his rhyming profanity straight at the leaves. The HR director tried to pull the plug, but he physically defended the mic. 32. Reading comprehension is a vital skill when interpreting event invitations. A guy from the logistics warehouse saw the phrase "Winter Wonderland" theme and somehow concluded this meant a full-blown pop culture costume contest. While the rest of the firm arrived in sleek tuxedos and elegant evening gowns, this absolute legend confidently strolled in wearing a massive, stifling, movie-quality Chewbacca suit, refusing to admit his humiliating mistake and just go home. He spent the luxurious evening stubbornly trying to sip expensive champagne through a dense wall of fake brown fur, occasionally emitting sad Wookiee groans whenever an executive stared at him. 33. The passive-aggressive potential of Secret Santa is truly limitless. A frustrated mid-level manager decided to execute the perfect stealth insult, anonymously wrapping a copy of Leadership for Dummies for his notoriously incompetent department director. He fully expected the guy to turn red with embarrassment upon opening it in front of the team. Instead, the joke spectacularly backfired. The clueless boss entirely missed the searing insult, genuinely believing it was a thoughtful resource for his expanding career. He proudly displayed the paperback on his mahogany desk for 6 months, terrifyingly quoting basic management tips from Chapter 2 during high-level strategy meetings. 34. Finding a quiet place to take a nap during a wild office party is a survival tactic, but location is everything. One exhausted associate somehow bypassed security, crawled underneath the CEO's massive oak desk, and completely passed out. Lacking proper bedding, he grabbed a thick stack of highly confidential merger and acquisition documents to use as a makeshift pillow. He remained undetected until 6 in the morning when the overnight cleaning crew switched on the lights. Seeing a guy snoring aggressively while drooling on million-dollar financial secrets, they panicked, fully believing they had interrupted the laziest corporate heist in American history. 35. Bringing an untrained animal to a corporate function is an arrogant flex that usually demands a high price. The CEO insisted on bringing his ridiculously expensive designer puppy to the gala, leaving it in a carrier near the stage. Right in the middle of his incredibly dry, self-congratulatory holiday speech, the tiny beast somehow jailbroke itself. The dog happily trotted onto the brightly lit stage, clamped its jaws onto the CEO's custom Italian leather shoe and forcefully yanked it off. The entire company sat in absolute silence, watching their ruthless boss engage in a pathetic, one-socked, low-speed chase around the podium. 36. There is a very specific reason you should never mix rhythmless accountants with a high-speed conga line. As the night dragged on, a massive, snaking human chain of heavily intoxicated employees began weaving recklessly through the cubicle maze. Gaining way too much momentum, the person leading this chaotic dance train completely failed to navigate a sharp corner near the IT department. The entire line slammed violently into the company's primary hardware rack like a freight train. They physically ripped out hundreds of cables, instantly unplugging half the firm's cloud storage data and triggering an apocalyptic, multi-million-dollar system failure. 37. Never hand the keys of a luxury European vehicle to an underpaid subordinate who drives a 10-year-old hatchback. Tasked with simply moving a senior partner's obscenely expensive Mercedes out of a fire lane, a junior clerk sat in the driver's seat and experienced total technological paralysis. Faced with a dashboard that looked like a spaceship console, he panicked and started mashing shiny buttons at random. Instead of putting the car in drive, he simultaneously engaged the extreme seat warmers, the massage function, and horrifically, the automated convertible roof. The pristine leather interior was fully exposed to a rapidly developing, aggressive winter snowstorm. 38. The +1 policy is always risky, especially when an employee brings a relentlessly optimistic motivational life coach as their date. Instead of enjoying the free booze, this guy treated the party as a massive lead generation opportunity. He spent the evening aggressively cornering irritated senior executives, desperately trying to manipulate them into registering for his bizarre weekend woods retreat. His networking efforts reached a terrifying climax when security had to physically intervene. He was literally trying to convince the cynical CEO to face his internal fears by walking barefoot across a tray of lukewarm, barbecue sauce-covered cocktail wieners. 39. Corporate managers are so accustomed to getting their way, they forget that hired DJs answer to no one. A mid-level supervisor, completely losing his mind over hearing Mariah Carey for the 5th time, slapped a crisp $20 bill on the turntable, demanding the music stop. The DJ politely laughed in his face. Unwilling to accept defeat, the manager maliciously escalated the situation, throwing down $50 to play Baby Shark on a deafening, unbreakable loop just to psychologically torture the marketing department. The DJ, an absolute capitalist genius, happily pocketed the cash, played the track exactly once, and called security. 40. Weaponizing pure greed is the easiest way to manipulate office workers. Some malicious prankster casually started a whisper campaign near the bar, claiming the notoriously penny-pinching CEO was secretly palming crisp $100 bills to people during his annual holiday handshakes. Human dignity evaporated in seconds. Suddenly, there was a massive, desperate, sweaty queue of aggressive employees wrapping around the ballroom just to shake the confused old man's hand. The absolute peak of absurdity hit when people started sprinting to the bathroom to swap sweaters or fashion fake mustaches out of napkin lint, just to cycle back through the line for a second payout. 41. Alcohol-fueled business epiphanies are never as brilliant as they seem in the moment. At exactly 2 in the morning, long after the party ended, a high-ranking sales director decided it was the perfect time to call his boss. He left a rambling, slurred, 3-minute voicemail detailing a revolutionary logistics framework that involved literally weaponizing flocks of urban street pigeons to bypass postal service delays. He passionately argued the cost-saving metrics of birdseed over diesel fuel. To make the digital evidence truly devastating, he used the last 30 seconds to loudly sing a completely unhinged theme song he had improvised for this avian enterprise. 42. Proving your dominance to 20-something interns is a young man's game, and this 40-year-old manager learned that the hard way. Trying to assert his alpha status at the expensive seafood buffet, he formally challenged 3 college kids to an underground eating contest using the notoriously questionable raw shrimp bar. He actually claimed the victory, destroying dozens of crustaceans in mere minutes. However, his triumph was hilariously short-lived. His digestive tract aggressively rejected the prize, forcing him to spend the entire glamorous evening barricaded inside the luxurious executive washroom, fighting a violent, losing battle against catastrophic food poisoning. 43. Navigating a fancy corporate appetizer menu is like walking through a culinary minefield. A strict vegetarian from Human Resources was absolutely thrilled to discover a massive silver platter of what she confidently assumed were miniature, plant-based veggie sausages. After enthusiastically inhaling a dozen of these savory treats, she tracked down the head caterer to praise his incredible meatless recipe. With a massive, joyful smile, the chef loudly informed her that she had just consumed 100% authentic, traditional Scottish haggis bites, heavily featuring sheep organs. The rapid succession of horror, denial, and profound nausea that washed over her face was legendary. 44. In a moment of sheer panic, you truly discover who the problem solvers are, and this financial analyst was definitely not one of them. Spotting a tiny manageable grease fire flare up near the sizzling live-action carving station, he decided to play the hero. Without reading any labels, he grabbed the largest bottle of clear liquid he could find and violently chucked it onto the flames. Tragically, the bottle was filled to the brim with highly flammable, 151-proof overproof rum. The resulting aggressive fireball illuminated the entire ballroom, sending a shockwave of heat that instantly incinerated the expensive, custom-fitted toupee right off the CFO's head. 45. Delegating the party entertainment to the youngest intern is a catastrophic financial risk. Told to hire a fun, high-energy Santa, he completely failed to vet the agency and accidentally booked a performer who exclusively catered to wild bachelorette parties. The guy showed up in a tearaway velvet suit and began a highly suggestive, deeply aggressive hip-hop dance routine right in front of the horrified 60-year-old board of directors. The music was deafening, the pelvic thrusts were weaponized, and the HR director looked like she was actively having a stroke near the appetizer table. 46. Corporate acquisitions usually breed quiet resentment, but it rarely explodes over a PA system. A developer from a scrappy, recently swallowed-up tech startup pounded 4 quick shots of tequila, hijacked the main stage microphone, and essentially committed career suicide. He passionately delivered an intensely emotional, tear-filled eulogy for his vastly superior old company. He began aggressively listing every specific way the massive new corporate overlords had destroyed their fun culture and crushed their souls. The tragic punchline? The ruthless CEO of the acquiring company, holding the power to fire him instantly, was standing exactly 3 feet away, glaring at him with dead eyes. 47. Liquid courage is a dangerous chemical when mixed with suppressed office rage. Fueled by 5 cups of highly questionable, grain alcohol-spiked fruit punch, a tiny junior accountant decided he was suddenly invincible. He aggressively cornered the terrified head of human resources against a coat rack and began delivering an unsolicited, brutally vicious performance review of the entire executive team. The absolute highlight of his tirade was loudly proclaiming that the highly respected millionaire CEO possessed the long-term strategic business vision of a heavily concussed goldfish. It was a fiery monologue that ended predictably. His electronic building access card was permanently deactivated before sunrise. 48. Amateur mixology should be strictly banned from all corporate events. An overly enthusiastic admin decided to handcraft hundreds of festive Jell-O shots for the party. Unfortunately, she accidentally purchased boxes of completely unflavored, medical-grade gelatin and mixed it with the cheapest, most aggressive plastic bottle gin on the market. The final product was a massive tray of terrifyingly clear rubbery cubes that tasted like hand sanitizer and pure, concentrated regret. However, because the entire sales team was desperately trying to stay in shape, they assumed these horrifying blocks were some cutting-edge, zero-calorie diet dessert. They choked down dozens of them while fighting back aggressive gag reflexes. 49. There is always that one guy in the office who makes amateur magic his entire personality. A lawyer who moonlighted as a terrible illusionist decided the holiday mixer was his time to shine. He arrogantly asked to borrow the chief financial officer's astronomically expensive, diamond-encrusted Rolex to perform a classic disappearing act. He dramatically draped a cheap silk handkerchief over the timepiece, chanted a ridiculous magical phrase, and ripped the cloth away. To everyone's absolute shock, the watch did, in fact, completely vanish. The massive problem was 20 minutes later, the lawyer still had absolutely no idea where it went. Security had to lock down the ballroom. 50. Hell hath no fury like an office worker with dietary restrictions who feels completely neglected. A highly disgruntled graphic designer was absolutely furious when she discovered the heavily advertised vegan option was literally just a sad, unseasoned wedge of iceberg lettuce on a paper plate. Deciding that if she had to suffer, everyone had to suffer, she quietly crept over to the buffet and maliciously swapped the elegant silver labels on the gravy boats. Half the executive team spent the evening unknowingly drenching their expensive roasted turkey in a muddy mushroom lentil puree, while the militant vegans happily consumed massive spoonfuls of pure, unfiltered beef drippings. Pure culinary terrorism. Admit it, you've definitely witnessed someone end their career near a buffet table. Get in the comments right now and tell me the most humiliating thing a coworker has done at your holiday party. Don't hold back. We thrive on the drama here. If you want more absolutely unhinged stories, hit subscribe and leave a like before your supervisor walks by.